Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Henkel, excellence is our passion.
This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy, episode 319 for February 12th of 2016. CCC, creating the Civic Coupe. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific or 20 hours GMT. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. You're Vasilash. Good to see you.
Good to be seen, John, on this.
It's been a week.
It has. It has. It's a good week, though. And it was a good show last week. For those who didn't watch it, they ought to.
Bob Lutz had a lot to say.
He did have
a
very lot to say.
And we got to let everybody know Henry Payne is in the house. The House of Payne.
House of Payne. Good to be here, John.
Good to have you here.
Yeah, always nice to visit with you.
Yeah, no, especially for this show.
Yeah.
And we got to let everybody know our special guest today is John Hwang. He is the development leader for the Honda Civic Coupe, and I think I got that right,
Yeah.
John. Is that right? Okay.
Thank you.
But you also worked on the sedan, not
That's
just
right.
the coupe.
Yeah, I helped out on the sedan as well.
But, well, let's talk coupe. We've got this beautiful blue version, deep blue version here in the studio with us. And just to kick off the conversation, tell us about how you guys benchmarked or who you benchmarked, because it's not your typical benchmarking, and not just which car you benchmarked, but how you went and tested this one.
That's a good point. So kind of instead of the Civic has kind of in the 40-year history had started focusing just in North America, for each region became more specific. So with this one, with our global development leader, Mr. Korea, who's got a real strong chassis background, and he was also the development leader for the current European Civic hatchback that's out in the market now. So he really understood the global aspect of the Civic and the global market nature. So he really wanted that European sense of stability, that stableness, the nimbleness, and the NVH, the noise, vibration, harshness. So he wanted to make a brand new platform to just really be able to compete everywhere. So to be able to do that, we benchmarked, instead of normal mainstream U.S. cars, U.S. market cars, rather, we benchmarked some more of the premium C-class cars, C-segment cars, like the Audi A3 or CLA, or the 2 Series, 1 Series. So with that kind of high benchmark, we were able to say, to be able to compete with them globally, we need a brand new platform, and we need brand new power plants, and that's how we started.
Those cars are a lot more expensive than
That's
the
right.
Civic.
Oh,
How do you pull this off? How do you use them as a benchmark and still hit your costs?
Well, we just have to do the best we can. We understand the priorities of what we wanted to do: the high-speed stability, the NVH, the ride comfort, and then we kind of can pick. And we don't want to necessarily make a Germanic kind of feeling car. It's a little bit heavier or something like that. So we have to keep that Honda. You guys know from driving our cars how light and nimble they feel, that little bit of aliveness. So we don't want to change that. So we keep that goodness, but also learn from them why they do this or that, and understand what's important and try to keep that going.
So, John, for somebody in the audience who's listening, he's going to hear, like, okay, here are these guys benchmarking Audis. Sure, yeah, that's right. Because, I mean, historically, or at least for the last several years, the Civic has been an economy car, an inexpensive vehicle. Back in the day, they were more performance-oriented, but it seemed that you guys had sort of lost your way in terms of a car that was almost iconic within its category. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you were doing this benchmarking, were you guys really serious that we're going to deliver, we're going to make this thing as special as it used to be?
Yeah, and we had the full support of our executives and everybody from our factories, from our development centers, that we really had to bring it back, and we were able to leverage every know-how, every effort. We pushed so strongly and hard to get everything applied, because it's so important and iconic, and we didn't want to have that kind of reception again, right? And we wanted the Civic to be global again, and not to have a separate version for Europe or Asia or North America, and one global iconic Civic that we'd be all proud of everywhere. Yeah.
So by doing that, you get leverage resources.
That's right. So by having one global platform and very similar set of hardware, we can have the economies of scale. And just recently, just driving up here, we drove by a hotel where we had a global supplier meeting for Honda, where we said we're going to find global suppliers to supply every factory for the Civic and things like that. We sourced in that kind of manner globally so that we can get that economies of scale and get the parts at a good cost, but still a very high quality premium performance.
John, you're talking about the lessons learned. Just to follow on what John and Gary have said, can you tease out one aspect of a Audi A3 that you guys really admire, and then what you admire about it? Is it materials? Is it suspension? What is it?
Suspension tuning, some of the quality of the bushings, or the all the NV countermeasures. So basically, like for example, on the Civic, we have full underbody covers. We have triple door seals, a lot of separators on the hood to separate it from the cowl, from the dashboard. So a lot of the know-how and all the wheel liners are all fabric type to really absorb the sound. So it's a really high performance kind of what we would have reserved for a higher level grade car. So what we wanted to do was not necessarily limit the performance or the capability or the quality of the car just because of the size. Does that make sense? You're going to kind of democratize the capabilities, because people want to buy a Civic because it's a smaller car, and because of that, we shouldn't penalize them by saying you can't have this or you can't have that, right? Everything should be available, and it's your choice, right?
I would imagine too, with a coupe buyer, their tastes and needs are more similar in various regions of the world than, say, a sedan buyer's.
That's right. So we can, because a coupe is a very North American kind of a body style, we could change a little bit. So we changed the proportions a lot. We changed the rear overhang, make it a lot shorter. Like a sedan, because it's going to be sold globally, we need to have trunk space, right? In China, they want 4 huge luggage pieces to go in the trunk, so we had to make sure. But for the coupe, North America, so it's really young, first-time buyers, real styling-driven. So we said, okay, let's make the top lower. We'll make the back shorter, so we can really focus on the design. Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that Honda continues to offer a coupe, because, if you look at that market, it's not that great. And in this car, you guys have a manual transmission, which is another thing that is seemingly going away. So talk about the decision of how you went about developing the powertrains.
We think a coupe is a very important segment. There are buyers out there, and we don't want to walk away from them. And there's significant volume. And sure, they took a hit. The sales took a hit during the recession, but it's coming back, and we're stable. And Civic Coupes always sold 50,000 units a year, and we don't want to walk away from them. And they're very loyal. From when we surveyed them, Honda Coupe, Civic Coupe buyers, or Accord Coupe buyers, or any other in the segment, they're really loyal. And when we talk to them, coupe loyalists don't want to buy a hatchback, right? Just like a hatchback buyer doesn't want to buy a coupe. So we want to keep them, and we want to keep delivering a strong product that they would enjoy and keep coming back to.
I'm really impressed to pick up on what Gary said, because the coupe market is not that big, and especially if you say, okay, let's take out all the luxury cars, the BMWs, the Lexuses, the Mercedes, and if you look at, what I'd call purpose-built 2-doors, a Fiat 500, a Smart, and if you take out the American pony cars, Camaro, Mustang, Challenger, what I only came up with, the only competition you really faced from a mass market brand is Kia and Hyundai. You got the Forte Coupe, and you got the Elantra Coupe, and that's about it.
Yeah, and the Elantra Coupe actually built out.
Yeah, I think they're, because the new one doesn't have
one. That's right.
And with Scion news from last week, basically the Forte Coupe is the
TC, right?
Yeah, is the only real competitor in the compact segment.
So how does Honda pull it off or does Honda have the only guts to go after 50,000 units a year?
Or is it clever manufacturing that allows you to do that?
Well, it's both. So first point is
guts and cleverness.
Yeah, first point is that we like these customers that we have with the Civic Coupe. They bring in to the Honda brand in America the youngest, the most single, and the most first-time buyers, right? And those are the perfect ones. So we want them, and we want them to buy the Civic and be impressed with it, so that when their lifestyle or lifestyle stage changes, they buy an Accord or they get a CR-V, right?
But it also kind of meets your brand, which is it's a sporty brand,
right? And the Civic has one of the largest penetration of younger millennial buyers, so we want to attract them, and a coupe is a perfect body style for that. And also, to Gary's point, because the base platform for the sedan and the coupe are so strong and the styling is so great, we can keep a lot of it common. You know, the hardware, the chassis, we didn't have to change. We didn't want to change. And the styling is so good, we didn't spend the money there, right? We spent money on more of the rear end because that's where it's going to be different anyway. So we spent money on all the LED lighting and adding more content and features that younger customers would like a premium stereo that's 450 watts, things like that. You know, that's what you can focus on instead of changing everything. When you start changing everything, then you already have lower volume, right? And we're in a mainstream segment, so you can't charge too much, so you kind of start losing, right? So you want to kind of focus on what's important and what the buyer is asking for and just do that.
Well, John, I have a coupe. I have an SI in my garage, and actually, when I shop for it, I started at the coupe, and then once I'm a classic dealer sucker. I walk in and I see the coupe, and then I see the SI. I got to have the SI. I got to have that extra horsepower.
No, you're just a discerning buyer.
Yeah, discerning. There you go. I like that word. But you're talking about a global platform too. Mm-hmm. You say the coupes are popular here. Presumably the 5-door mm-hmm. is going to be more popular in Europe.
That's right. So the coupe's main market is North America, so we're going to build the coupes in our Ontario factory. And then the hatchback, the 5-door, is going to be mostly popular in Europe, so we'll make that in our UK plant. But as we've already announced, it's going to come to the US very soon. So it's going to be exciting to have a hatchback come back to the US market for Civic, but actually as a first-time 5-door. The previous hatchback was a 3-door back in the early 2000s.
When you were developing this vehicle, I mean, the sedan is being developed as well at the same time.
That's right.
So, I mean, what was your charge versus the person who was doing the sedan? What was it that you had to embody in this vehicle that would differentiate it sufficiently from the sedan? Besides 2 doors.
That's the easiest part, just weld the rear doors shut and there you go. No, but what we wanted to do was, because the sales volume is not as high as a sedan. Sedan's going to sell, millions. What you want to do is make sure that what you wanted to accomplish is kind of baked into the sedan, so that it lowers the cost or lowers the potential for any exclusivity on the coupe. So you kind of have to be smart about, do I want to change this or not, or and make sure everything is possible. And because it's lower volume, then you can explore different ways. So like the sedan, there's a real high amount of ultra high strength steel and super high strength steel because we needed the weight, and also we have the volume. It's okay to spend all that money on tooling or things like that. But on the coupe, we don't have the volume, so we don't want to necessarily spend all that money. So it's okay to trade the cost for weight because like you said, it has 2 less doors, so it's automatically lighter. And we made it shorter, so it's even lighter than that. So we said, okay, well, let's trade off the weight. So we can apply more traditional, normal high-strength steels or something like that to pay for or not spend. And that's kind of how you have to balance when you have a low-volume product.
You mentioned 50,000 more or less in the U.S. On a global basis, how many of these will you sell?
It'll probably be about 60,000. So we sell some, mostly in the Central America and North American markets. So basically Canada and the Caribbean markets and Mexico is where primary coupe buyers are. Yeah.
One of the really impressive things about the sedan is the rear seat room. I'm a big guy, and the Civic is notable for its rear space. I can sit behind myself easily. I can sit upright. It's got the most room in segment. Move to a coupe. Is that important to a coupe buyer to have a decent size rear seat, even with 2 doors?
Not necessarily, but we kept the long wheelbase, same wheelbase as sedan, and because we wanted to keep that styling. We thought instead of making the wheelbase shorter, we decided to shorten the rear overhang. And basically, if you look at the car, the front overhang and the rear overhang are identical in size. So it really makes the car look low and wide and long. So you're stretching the wheels out to the corner virtually by just chopping the rear end off. So instead of making the wheelbase shorter, which is typically what a coupe will do, we just decided to reduce the rear overhang. That had some additional challenges for rear crash or packaging of the trunk, but we decided that was a more worthy challenge than just simply shortening the wheelbase. And to your point, that's right. Like our research shows for a coupe buyer, less than 5% of the time, someone else other than the driver's in the car. And that's pretty, you can validate that yourself when you're driving around, you know. You see somebody driving a coupe, there's really nobody else in there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is it lower than the sedan?
The car overall is almost an inch lower. That's right. So, which is already an inch lower than the previous sedan. So it's, yeah.
Which helps in the proportions
That's
and the
right.
stance and all that.
That's right.
Also, going back to keeping the same wheelbase and chopping off the rear overhang from a tooling standpoint, I guess that's going to save you a lot of money.
That's right.
too.
We can keep all the major floor pan parts and the frame rails all common. That's right. Because it's made in the same factory as the sedan, so you want to make sure everything's efficient. Yeah.
Talk about what's under the hood of this car.
So basically, the power plants or the engine combinations are the same as the sedan. So we have a naturally aspirated 2-liter engine. And then we have, as an option, we have a new 1.5-liter direct injected turbocharged engine for the first time in America that we're offering it in the Honda channel. So we're really excited about having 2 unique power plants. They're both brand new for the Civic. So we have a brand new platform that we're going to make globally the same. And then on top of that, we had to develop 2 new power plants. So it was pretty Herculean task. That's why we had to split the work between the Japan R&D and the US R&D to make sure we can all just do the best we can.
And the CVT transmission?
So yeah, CVT transmissions also have new logic and new torque converters, but their starting point is from the Accord. Yeah.
Hey, sorry, go ahead.
I was recently on a Elantra test, and the Elantra is very impressive. And I think there's a feeling in the segment now they really got to keep up with you guys because the Civic has set a new benchmark. But the Elantra folks chose not to go to a CVT. And it was interesting talking to them, and they said, you know, it is a real challenge to mate a CVT to an engine and do it right, particularly when you're trying to get performance out of a car. Talk about that a little bit.
I mean, we've been applying CVTs, or we have been learning that CVT know-how since the first Insight hybrid. And one of the unique things about our Honda CVT is that we have a torque converter, like a traditional automatic transmission, so we can really multiply the torque and handle that. And also our shift logic, so we call it G-logic, G-logic. I'm sorry. But basically, we're kind of trying to simulate some of that traditional automatic transmission feeling so that it seems more natural and less rubber bandy, per se. And with the current Accord, I think we've really hit that.
Well, especially for the Accord buyer. I think you absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
The key will be how well, Gary, we can't talk driving impressions.
Well, you can tell us about when you drove the sedan.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we drove the sedan.
Everybody drove the sedan,
and it's
but I
terrific.
can't. So, yeah, it was much nicer last week being in San Diego than right now being in Detroit. But
I agree with you.
I can't give you those impressions.
John, we got a couple of questions here that have come in from viewers. Maverick1 wants to know, did your benchmarking include structural joints, for example, adhesives? And is there laser brazing that you're using in any of this?
On the Civic, we did investigate laser welding, but we decided because we are building the car in so many plants, it was kind of a little bit more difficult to do, and we didn't want to make 2 different structures or 2 different ways of building the car, so we ultimately decided against it. But we did apply short pitch welding, like almost not continuous, but very close pitch than we've ever done before. So we leveraged what we knew and try to make the body as rigid as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And some of these other questions, I think we've already addressed. How come you're able to sell coupes? You mentioned we're going to see the Civic hatchback in the U.S.
Yeah.
And Jim Campbell wants to know, can you say anything about the NSX?
NSX, I worked on it for a little bit. I guess that's about the only thing I could say.
What part did you work on?
I was on the interior development team a long time ago, or several years ago, before I was assigned to the Civic team. So
Gotcha.
So I got to ask. So last week I met Guy Melville Brown,
That's right.
who is the chief exterior designer for this vehicle. Now, did you work closely with this guy? Because I mean, he was quite clearly the most enthusiastic designer I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, and you just gain from his energy, right? And you wanna, those are the kind of designers that are really successful and get what they want because they motivate you, right? And you wanna work extra hard to make sure whatever they wanna do can be realized, right? Because it's so easy to say, I'm sorry, Guy, I can't do that because it will cost me a nickel more, or somebody.
So what did he want in this car that you gave him?
The rear lighting.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so he wanted the lights to go all the way across, but he didn't want it constantly illuminated, like a constant brightness. He wanted it to fade as you go to the center.
Oh, interesting.
Why would you do that? Well, I mean, he's a designer, right?
Because it looks
Very
cool,
looks
right,
cool.
yeah.
And there's logic to it, right? Other than it looks cool, it still connects the car back to the sedan, right? So in the daytime, you get this nice continuous lighting image, so it looks cool, looks sporty. But at the nighttime, it still has that C mark for Civic because it fades. So it fades to half brightness at the center. So we could have, if he wanted it straight, all the same illumination, we could have just put LEDs all the way across and it looked fine. But he wanted it to fade.
John, we've talked a lot about the chassis and the exterior on this car, but the interior is quite a bit different than the last generation Civic, the last few generations of Civics. And one thing I noticed, and you see this in a lot of manufacturers today, is that your infotainment display is iPad-like. Are you guys getting a lot of cues from the electronics industry as you do interiors these days?
I think there's a lot of going back and forth. I mean, certainly some OEMs kind of develop it to look like literally like an iPad that's stuck on the, we've certainly tried it or mocked it up to try that, but we kind of like it better when it's integrated.
Yeah.
And because we've had instances where if it looks too separate, people will think it's removable.
Tugging on it.
So we don't want that to happen. So we're always overthinking it too much. So we just put just a little bit of separation so it looks new and modern, but at the same time, you can clearly tell it's attached, so don't pull on it. Yeah.
I like the integrated look myself. I think, the having a tablet in the instrument panel right now is sort of new and different. I think the ones that look like they're just stuck on there in just a couple of years are going to look so out of place, so old-fashioned. So I like the integrated look.
So you guys have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And so how important was that for this vehicle?
I think because of the young buyers we're targeting, it's critical. It's so important that everybody's attached to their iPhone, so we wanted to make sure, and their Android phones, that it was smooth and it was seamless in the way that it integrated, because that's their expectation. They're that they want to be able to use their phone anywhere, so we want to make sure that it works. And we were able to launch the Civic with both CarPlay and Android Auto, so I think it's been well received so far.
Mm-hmm. Is it standard on the car?
It is standard from the EX grade and above.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you get that 7-inch touchscreen, then it comes with it.
So what are you guys finding in the sedan, which you've had on the market? Is that a selling point? Are you finding?
Yeah,
are you getting a lot of
really
feedback?
Big selling point. You can see it from every car show. Everybody, CarPlay, Android Auto. So I mean, it's a really good, strong sales point to have both.
So isn't it surprising to you that you're developing this car and you're looking at the chassis and the performance and the dynamics and on and on and on, and people are going, but do you have CarPlay?
You got to balance that. I mean, because those are the realities, right? Oh, does it have Pandora? Does it have Apple CarPlay? So you got to make sure it works and it's available. But at the same time, you want to, when they actually stop using the phone and drive, you want to make sure, oh, it's a nice car. It's quiet. It's stable.
Yeah.
And it feels safe, right? It gives you confidence to drive. And I think that finally is what's going to hook them to your brand, and they'll come back.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of safety, what sorts of technologies do you have in this vehicle for?
So for the Civic, for the first time, we're applying the full suite of Honda sensing technologies, and on the Coupe, it'll be available on the touring grade, and then on the sedan, it's available on every trim.
And what does that mean to people who don't work?
So it has a collision mitigation braking system. So it'll, with low speed follow, in other words, it'll apply the brakes for you if there's some impending danger. Also, we have lane departure mitigation, so if you start drifting off, we'll pull you back. And then also for each of those modes, we have a warning system as well that beeps and alerts you to take some action. And we have lane keeping, road departure mitigation, collision mitigation braking system, forward collision warning. The list goes on and on. It's a fantastic safety suite of technologies. And then also with the Civic, we have standard electronic parking brake. So we can really leverage that system with a brake hold feature so that when it's enabled, when you come to a stop at a traffic jam or heavy traffic condition, you just let your foot off the brake and the car will stay stopped until you're ready to go, and then you just push the gas and you're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, these are really the features that were on luxury cars just a generation ago.
Yeah, and it's just all coming
That's
down.
right.
Yeah.
Or last week.
Right.
Yeah.
And now you're expecting them on a compact. It's
That's
extraordinary.
right. Yeah.
John, with that, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and especially for having a coupe here in the studio with us. We always love having the cars in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Real good. Okay, we've got to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and talk about some of the other news going on in the industry. First, we're going to give a shout out to our friends at Bridgestone. Yeah, I'm just intrigued that Honda knows how to pull off doing a coupe when, like I said, there's plenty of other coupes on the market,
Right.
but to base it off a mainstream sedan, and that you just don't see that much anymore.
Yeah, but a manual transmission option. I mean, think about that. I mean, so we have small and even smaller, and yet they're doing it.
But you know, what he said was so key is, here's entry-level buyers. Everybody in this business is knocking themselves out trying to get those younger buyers. And, you know, I got to believe that's part of the business plan here is not just what kind of profit can we make on this car, but let's look at what this car is going to do for us long-term and base our economics that way.
I figure too that I believe Honda's best-selling car, at least this year, is the CR-V. I mean, you're increasingly your appliance customers are going into crossovers. They're getting out of sedans, and so I think it strikes me as important that when you make a sedan, particularly an entry-level sedan, that it's sporty. It brings in enthusiasts, and it just offers a different experience than a crossover.
Guess what, too?
It's got to be based on an
crossover
Audi.
thing is at the top of the market, too. I was just looking at the numbers. In fact, Tesla put out this interesting thing looking at comparing its car to other luxury sedans. They're all down. I mean, they're down. The more expensive the sedan gets, the faster the sales are dropping. It was an eye-opener to me. I knew that this was happening in the mass end of the market, that people are abandoning passenger cars and going into CUVs. I didn't realize how much it's hitting the luxury segment.
Well, look at what Nissan just did with the Armada. I mean, the Armada, this big hulking truck-based thing, they're taking it out of the pickup truck plant and they're sending it over to Japan, where it'll be built next to the Lexus. Because even
Infinity.
I'm sorry, the Infinity, because even at that end of the market, even on a rail chassis, folks want the big SUV and that rides nice.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, now it's time for Dr. Data.
All right, we have a
And his
number. We have a number. Okay, Carmen, bring the first number up, please.
3.
+3. What do we think +3 is? You're not going to guess what +3 is, and so I'm just going to tell you what +3 is. +3
I'll say
is
+3 is we're going to get 3 more Civic variations here this year.
That's true too, I think. Okay, so +3 is the weekly economic confidence index for the United States last year at this time.
And what's that mean?
Okay, so basically what Gallup does is every week they do an index. It consists of 2 components. It's how Americans rate current economic conditions and whether they feel the economy is getting better or getting worse. So if everything was coming up roses and everybody felt like it couldn't get any better, it'd be +100. And if they felt it couldn't get worse, it would be -100. Okay, so they do this every week.
Okay, so last year +3.
+3. So what is it now this week?
Well, I'll bet it's negative, and we'll see what it really
Henry,
is.
what do you think? So given everything you know about the economic situation, beside today's big, massive sell-off, forget that, because this was taken.
That's part of it?
No, this was taken before the sell-off.
Yeah,
right?
but the markets have been chattering about that for a while. I'm going +1.
You're going +1? Okay, and so the actual number is, Carmen?
-13.
-13.
Not
okay.
only is it minus, it's
Now, okay,
13.
but look at this.
There's
We have record low gas prices and low unemployment, and it's -13.
Right.
What's going on now?
I'll tell you what's going on. It's because every presidential candidate is telling you how bad everything is so that they can get in and fix it.
All right. So if the surveyed Americans think that it's minus 13, is there going to be an effect on car sales this year?
No.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I mean, the sales have been extraordinary. I mean, who would have thunk we'd be back here at 17.5 coming out of the recession? I mean, but really, to put my public policy hat on, what is unusual about this economy is that if you take out autos and you take out energy, this economy is really sucking air. And you can go to my home state of West Virginia, just a couple states over, where the EPA is destroying its industry. Literally, you have a regulatory agency destroying the coal industry. You have 40,000 miners out of work in the last 6 years, and so and that's a result of government policy. So I get the minus 13. There's a lot of unhappiness.
I don't get it. And I'll tell you, yeah, the stock market is tanking. Yeah, the manufacturing index is nosediving. Yeah, there's so much uncertainty in the world. Yeah, every single presidential candidate, there's fewer of them, thank God, are telling you how bad everything is. We're seeing all-time record car sales. January was a great month. Even though the media is trying to tell you how bad it was, on a daily selling rate basis, it was up really strong. The SAAR is up 1 million over a year ago. You look at the employment data, it's rock solid.
But
the employment rate is coming down because more people are getting jobs, not because more people are dropping out of the workforce. And yet, everybody's opinion, and here's another stat I'll throw out. And this is just astonishing to me. If you ask anybody in the United States today, what's the crime issue like? Oh, it's bad. It's terrible. It's bad. You look at the FBI rates, our crime rate, and I don't care what category you look at, murders, thefts, larceny, burglary, rape, we're at the lowest levels we've been in the last half century.
Historic.
And nobody knows this. Why? Because we're fed, and the media loves this, of keeping this state of fear. Keep you in a state of fear because you got to tune in. You got to tune in tonight. You got to tune in tomorrow morning. You got to watch it all day long because all we're going to do is feed you the worst news going on. Right. I don't think things are rosy, but I don't think they're nearly as bad as they're made out to be.
So 39% of Americans overall, 39% named some economic issue as being the most important problem in February. So well, I'm a little skittish about this whole car thing. And then you reported yesterday about Experian Automotive came out with the numbers in terms of
delinquencies and subprime.
Even though they're very small, it seemed astonishing to me that that they were warning about the delinquencies on the 60-month loans. I mean, geez, oh man!
But the 60-month loans went from 0.72% to 0.77%.
He's good.
And I know these numbers off the top of my head.
Those
are the exact numbers. And yet, if you turned on all the financial news, any of the network news, it was like, oh no, we're going to hell in a handbasket because all these subprime buyers are getting it and they're going delinquent. It's not happening at all. We're talking fractions of a fraction of a percent.
Everybody saw The Big Short. They're waiting for all that to happen.
Now they're going to want to short subprime car loans.
But the statistic you're citing, Gary, is from last year to this year, and there's no doubt there's a lot more anxiety. I mean, historically, John's right. We're at record low crime levels. But we're also historically at the worst recovery we've ever had coming out of a major recession.
True.
You have a lot of pockets in this country that are not performing. At the same time, you have these micro indicators like the crime rate is up in the last year. Murder rate is up. Health premium costs are way up. And you do have near record numbers of people not participating in the labor pool. So even though that unemployment rate is nice below 5%, you got large numbers of people who stop looking for work because it's hard to find work when employers
like I said,
are having to meet Obamacare.
Rosy.
Right.
I'm just saying we're being fed this bad news, maintaining this constant state of fear. And I don't think it's as bad. How could you have record car sales if everything's this bad?
Right.
And, the other thing, too, is you'd think that with these record sales, we'd be starting to lower the average age of cars. We're not. It's actually inched up a little bit. that tells me there's still going to be pent-up demand of all these old cars that are going to wear out and have to get replaced.
Well, and thank goodness for cars. I mean, as I say, you look across the economy.
Yeah, we wouldn't have anything to do this afternoon.
Yeah,
If it
you
weren't
take
for
out
cars. We'd be doing something else. I mean,
you take out cars, you take out energy, and this market's hurting. And energy has really been hurt in the last year. So that fracking boom.
Producers have been hurt. The energy consumers.
the energy burners are very happy.
But the energy producers were big job creators with fracking across the north part of this country.
Yeah.
That unemployment boom has tailed off.
No, there's no question, and I hope they saved some of their money when things were going crazy there. But
I'm all for sub $2 gallon
I
gas.
saw $1.38 a gallon today, and I'm telling you, that's helping the country, not hurting it.
Yeah, but to get back to our auto guys, does that help or hurt the auto guys? You have every manufacturer in this business is investing billions of research into electric cars in order to meet government mandates, where the market is going the opposite way.
I know.
So basically, you have the auto manufacturers. The healthy ones are able to make cars for two consumers: government and the regular customer. Now, what's that do for companies like Chrysler that doesn't have that kind of money? I mean, they're looking at potentially some tough times ahead.
Oh, no, they are. I totally agree with you. Okay, enough of the politics.
Right.
What else?
More data?
Gary, what about you? You wanted to talk about Super Bowl. Speaking of Fiat Chrysler and ads.
All right, so here's the thing. So Carmen, could you bring up the first ad, please?
I got a question for you. What does this city know about luxury? Huh? What is it?
Okay, I know.
All right, do you remember this ad?
This is the original M&M ad.
2 years ago, 2013 actually, 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Okay.
Chrysler.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ad, smash hit.
Smash hit.
Two-minute ad, too,
Right.
which is unheard of these
2-minute ad. All right. So this year, so then there was the Clint Eastwood ad. Remember that they had the Clint Eastwood? He did the voiceover and
Detroit is back.
Detroit, and it's just like, damn, right?
Did a hell of a lot of good for the Chrysler 200, didn't it?
Well, that's another story. But okay, so Super Bowl. Here it is. The big time Super Bowl for all the advertisers, and so we're waiting for Chrysler. So what does Chrysler have? So Carmen, could you bring up the portraits ad, please? All right. So this is this year's Super Bowl ad.
Jeep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Knows that every man should dare. From the beaches of Normandy
And
to the far reaches of the earth.
it's pleasant
In my
enough, right? I
life,
mean, it's. But what happened?
Well,
Why didn't? Okay, and it's a 1-minute ad. They did another one for Jeep because this is 75th anniversary for Jeep, and I'm waiting to be knocked out of my seat. I mean, I watched that ad and I thought, maybe the guy who's the voiceover, maybe he's somebody famous. So I contacted Chrysler and said, who is it? And they responded, it's a guy named Bob Juergens. I've never heard of Bob Juergens before. And so I really wonder, it's not only did they not have these alternative powertrains, but something's happened in their advertising that Olivier Francois dropped the ball, literally and figuratively this year on the Super Bowl, I think. They didn't have great ads.
Well, they didn't have personally, I thought that the first Jeep ad that ran, the copy in that is brilliantly written. I don't know who wrote that, man, but in my book, they get a star. But I would agree that they didn't have this, they didn't have the buzz that those earlier ads that you mentioned had. And, that might have been part of their thinking, is that, we just can't hit one out of the park every single time.
Oh, but did they even try?
No, they didn't try.
So did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did. I really liked the Honda ad for their new little pickup.
So
With the
that would be the ad
sheep.
for the
with the singing sheep.
the
The
ridge
singing
line.
sheep. I mean, yeah, the
I
ridge
think we have
line.
that. Here we go. We have that one.
I'm going to go.
Here we go.
Take a look at yourself in the mirror and cry. What you doing to me? I spent all my years believing you. I just can't get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good one.
So I'm going to go buy a Ridgeline so I can go find some singing sheep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
and to say nothing.
Adventure.
And to say nothing.
I got bad news for you, Henry.
You don't think they're out there, John? And then
the talking dog. I mean, that ends the ad.
And the talking dog. I guess you have a talking dog to find talking sheep. But the other one that was buzzworthy was the NSX. There was a lot of buzz from the testosterone crowd about this coming thing. I'm going to test it at the end of the month.
Because of the Van Halen soundtrack. So we had, what was it, 3 weeks ago, Dave Zuchkowski from Hyundai.
Right.
And, you know, that Hyundai is the official
NFL sponsor
of the NFL. And they had a couple of interesting ads. Carmen, you want to play the Ryan Reynolds one? This is actually a cute ad.
So it's two young women driving around in a car. And they love this cute guy, and everywhere they go, they see this cute guy.
Cute, famous movie star, yes.
Yes.
Who's got a movie coming out. So it works for both Hyundai and for Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
And then the payoff we won't go through this whole thing is that it shows that they have the emergency braking stop because they're distracted and car stops. And one that sort of puzzled me is very funny. The Kia had an ad for the Optima, and they have Christopher Walken in it, the world's most creepy actor.
Yeah, I was going to say that gives me the creeps.
Yeah, I'm a big Walken fan.
And so he goes into the walk-in closet to find his beige socks, and there's Christopher Walken with his beige socks. And there's one thing that really struck me as being odd is Christopher is berating the man for being so beige. And he ends up describing the Optima, and this is Christopher Walken is describing it as, quote, "It's like the world's most exciting pair of socks, but it's a mid-size sedan." I somehow don't think that, you know, you want to describe your mid-size
Like I said, the
sedan
Jeep copy was brilliant. That copy, not so much.
So I don't know. It just strikes me that this year there were some good ads, but you know, and it was like the game.
Like the game,
right?
So.
Yeah, that's right. It was a so-so game.
Not really exciting.
Yeah.
But
last year was a better game, better ads.
Yes. So I'm hoping next year that Chrysler brings it, that they actually
bring their A game,
knock one out of the park.
There you go. Hey, look, let's take another quick commercial break here, and we've got a lot more to talk about. First, we're going to give a shout out to our friends at Henkel.
A little chemistry goes a long way, especially when it comes to vehicle development. From enabling the use of alternate materials to withstanding extreme vehicle environments, Henkel's adhesive, sealants, and surface technologies provide solutions for every vehicle segment. Come see for yourself. Our Detroit area headquarters offers 12 research and development and testing laboratories with the ability to do full-range testing and validation on actual vehicle parts. Sign up to tour our labs at henkelna.com/tour.
Which one?
About that.
Okay, we're back. And so, Henry, I got to ask you, you know, SEMA put out a press release this week saying that the EPA is trying to sneak one in under the radar to prevent people from converting production cars into race cars. I'm sure you're going to have a field day with this, being a racer yourself.
Yeah, being a racer, and I race purebred sports cars, but one of the wonderful cultures in this country is the Lemons racing, and there's a lot of racing for guys who can get in cheap and take their street car and go racing on the track, and you do certain modifications, and kudos to SEMA for bird dogging this. They have an economic interest. They make a lot of parts that go into these track cars, but the EPA has been doing a comprehensive re-reg of the U.S. economy. It's not just the big stuff like the cars that we're familiar with, these mile per gallon mandates that are putting enormous stress on the bottom lines of manufacturers, but it's also reaching into airliners now, it's reaching and all the way into the weekend racer. And you know, a lot of the weekend racer community is saying, yeah, but who's going to come arrest a guy for lemons? But the fact that EPA is into this, into the weeds on this kind of stuff shows how all-powerful
so I want to read a quote because it's like a 629-page document. No, I did not read 629 pages since this came out. But okay, this is from the document. In particular, we generally consider non-road engines and vehicles to be quote, used solely for competition, close quote, based on usage characteristics. This allows EPA to set up administrative processes to approve competition exemptions, and to create exemption from the tampering prohibition for products that are modified for competition purposes. So I'm reading this, and it's basically saying, no problem. Get exemptions.
Well, exactly, and that's the problem. I mean,
There's no problem. It's not a problem. It's a non-issue.
There was no problem. I mean, the EPA and the racing enthusiast community have lived with this rule for a long time. So why is EPA changing it? And at this moment, when EPA is trying to eliminate coal, EPA is getting into what the manufacturers have to produce in markets like California. There's a real worry about why is the EPA rewriting this rule?
There is no prohibition against actual use of certified motor vehicles or motor vehicle engines for competition purposes.
No, but you can. But it's the reason SEMA bird dogged this, and again, good for SEMA, is that the language changed. The language is contradictory. You go through that 600 pages, which SEMA has done, and the language is contradictory. EPA has added language saying you cannot take a streetcar and modify it for the track.
Well, what they're specifically saying is you cannot remove any of the emissions control equipment.
That's right.
And so this whole document, the 629-page document, is actually a document that is talking about emissions from trucks, on-road and off-road trucks. And then they talk about, okay, you have to have this on it and that on it and this and that and that and that and that. And then you get to about like page 543, and here's this paragraph in there.
Well, why are they sneaking this into something to do with trucks?
Because they're a bunch of lawyers sitting around and they got nothing to do. They got
because they're overregulating.
All right, I want to talk about something more positive. Okay. You should be excited. You should be very excited about this, John.
I'm excited already. What is it?
I know this is one of your favorite cars, one of your favorite technologies. Did you know that there is a new nano flow cell car that has been licensed for?
It's still my heart. Tell me about
the Quantino.
Oh, the Quantino, yeah.
No, the Quant was the big one.
Right,
This is the baby.
Right.
And it was last year at Geneva, they showed it. Now it's got a license. It's going to be on the road using that flow cell technology that are very positive about.
Well, I find it intriguing. I'm not sure that this is ever going to work, but they're making progress.
The ionic liquid, which is harmless to the environment and to health, and is also cost-effective to produce, but we don't know what it is.
It's salt water.
Did you know about this?
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
The nano flow cell?
Don't know that.
This is going to.
Can you use it in a Camaro can you use it in a Camaro 1LE? That came out this week.
Revolutionize the world.
In fact, we've got a phone call that just came in about that Camaro. Carmen, let's bring that phoner in.
Hey guys, great show. Jonathan out in Old Japan. What's your take on the Camaro 1LE being shown at Chicago? That looks like an insanely fast road track vehicle. What's your take on it? Going to be a success? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Will it be faster than the Mustang GT350 on the track? I'm good.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, will the EPA even let us?
That's right.
Well, EPA even
okay, Henry, what do you think? 1LE.
It's a wicked car. And what's really cool about the new 1LE is that for the first time, they're going to apply that performance package to the six-cylinder. And I just got out of the six-cylinder, and the six-cylinder is an absolute ball to drive. We all know the V8 is the Corvette engine and has all kinds of power. But what is extraordinary about this generation Camaro is it's built on the Alpha chassis, the same chassis as the ATS, which is the best handling sedan in luxury. You bring that chassis into the pony car segment, and it's going to beat up on the Mustang. The 1LE is not going to be as good as the GT350. You're going to have to wait for the Z28 for that. But this Camaro 1LE is going to be really exciting for the enthusiast crowd.
Yeah, I think this Camaro, they've really nailed it this time.
It's awesome. You can't see out of it. I mean, they narrowed the greenhouse.
You can see going forward. You can't see from the sides. Yeah. You can't see going back. So it's the only direction you need to go.
Yeah, so the great Gumball Rally line. What's behind me is not important.
See, there you go. They probably just used that as their mantra when they were putting that car together.
Yeah. But, you get all these electronics coming into the car. I mean, I was just driving a 2LT that has the 6-cylinder, and it's got all the electronic stuff. It's got a heated steering wheel. It's got all this electronic stuff that's coming into a $39,000 car, $29,000 base. And really, I mean, it's a good-looking car, and I think, given the performance, given the chassis dynamics of this Camaro, I think people really ought to cross-shop it with BMWs and Audis. I mean, it's a distinct-looking thing, and it handles as well as a BMW 3 Series because it's on that ATS chassis.
Well, there you go. That's a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, I have a problem imagining the guy who's going to buy that 3 Series rolling into his local Chevy dealer and saying, I want to see that Camaro.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just me, but
branding matters.
Yeah. Okay, another thing that broke this week is NHTSA came out and said, okay, if you have autonomous technology, we're going to consider that a driver. Gary, what do you make of this ruling?
Well, I think, actually, I have all 26 pages in here of the document. So basically, to set it up, so last fall, Chris Urmson from Google sent a letter to NHTSA basically saying, "Look, guys, we want to go to level 4. We don't want this."
Meaning fully autonomous.
Fully autonomous.
No
we don't want a steering wheel.
wheel.
We don't want pedals. We don't want brakes. Right. We don't want any of that stuff in the vehicle. And because they believe that if you have that stuff, it can actually, contribute driver error. Okay, so they're saying we want a fully autonomous vehicle, but if you look at the federal standards, it prohibits that from happening for a variety of reasons, and therefore they're saying, hey, would you please take a look at these things and see whether we can do without the steering wheel, whether we can do without the brake pedals, whether we can do without even the gauges that's FMVSS requirement. And so basically, Google is saying the driver of our car is an artificial intelligence.
AI.
That's the driver, okay? So it's not a human driver, and we believe that we need to make it so that this entity will be responsible for the vehicle. And basically, the response from NHTSA was like, yeah, you guys are right, that it really is driving the car, and perhaps you don't need this stuff. And so they didn't make any rules, but they were saying that they can make interpretations of certain things. So the interpretation is such that you may not need a steering wheel. Now, this is in some ways almost more confusing than that thing I was reading from
EPA.
From the EPA, because basically...
Well, it's 400 pages shorter.
but basically, the thing that I can't figure out, it seems that for whatever reason, the thing they're really hung up on are turn signal stalks and whether you can turn the brights on and off of the car. I mean, it seems like, that's throwing a monkey wrench into things. But Google's going to win on this. I mean, it's just that they're going to get certification, and they're going to be able to drive cars without.
But they didn't win on the California regs, so it does raise the question, Gary, who's in charge?
Who's trumping whom?
Yeah, does the federal interpretation trump California? Because California regs just came out last fall, and said you have to have a steering wheel in the car.
When were they enacted?
But
they
said they're going to
It's about time the taco.
Hey, hello, control room.
So, I think this is a major step forward for autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, I do too. Look, Mark Rosekind, who now runs NHTSA, has said he wants to see technology that can save lives get with the program, and i.e. NHTSA's got to get with the program and allow this stuff to happen much more quickly. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I go back to the 1970s when it took us years to get them to change the regulations so we could go from round headlights to square headlights, and that was just regulation run amok. I'm pleased to see Rosekind coming out and say, look, if you guys prove to us that this can work, we're going to grant you exemptions to the rules that have been on the books since the first horseless carriages came down the pipe.
But it is an interesting balancing act because one of the nice things about the 50 states of America is that you got these states who are experimenting with how these things work. I mean, California comes out with a stricter regulation. Maybe Texas or Michigan comes back and says, you know, we got a little, we'll give you more leeway in autonomous. You know, if the feds come in and start trying to set one-size-fits-all standards, I worry about that a little bit. I mean, we don't know where autonomous is going. And I do like the idea that you got 50 states sort of competing and trying to figure out how autonomous lives with humans.
For the industry, it's a disaster. It's just like global regulations. You know, everybody wants to harmonize in the industry. They want to harmonize regulations because they don't want to have, as they do today, even the symbols on the instrument cluster are different in Europe than they are in the United States. It doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't improve safety one iota. The seatbelt anchors, the designs, and the testing are different between Europe and the U.S. Believe me, no one's died because of a seatbelt anchor design flaw. So we don't need all this stuff.
Right, and Henry realized that, you know, in terms of brake pedal positioning and where things are located on the vehicle, I mean, those are federal regulations. And
I know, but the federal regulations you have now and that sort of thing is in a very mature industry. I mean, we've had steering wheel gasoline powered cars for 100 years. Autonomous is a new technology. What you're talking about is public transportation on public roads. No steering wheel, no dash. You're putting basically a train car onto the public roads. And, you know, I think
about rails.
Yeah, you know, there's something to be said for experimenting with how that works. And do you want the federal government setting all the rules here, or do you want the states competing?
Look what's already happened in emissions. Because California wrote the first emission regulations ever before the federal government got involved, they've been grandfathered in. They can write whatever emission standard they want. And this was a Supreme Court ruling, and the Supreme Court gave them their blessing and said, no, you guys were first. So federal law does not trump California law. And that's what's going to come down in this case, too. When did when did California enact, not introduce that legislation, but enact it? And when did NHTSA first start talking about granting these exemptions? I think it's going to be a huge battle. And, you know, California is where most of this technology for autonomy is coming out of.
And you wait and see. They're going to change. I think this is a force that is.
I hope you're right, Gary.
All right. So you mentioned the Armada. And you mentioned the Camaro. We ought to talk a little bit about Chicago Motor Show going on right now. Today is the first press day. We're obviously not in Chicago since we're sitting right here.
Well, that's a problem for Chicago.
And the thing is that so. When we were talking about the Detroit show, there was this big issue of, CES is gonna kill the Detroit show. I mean, really, near as I can tell, you've got Nissan. Okay, so they've got the Armada, and they have
Kia Nitro.
Which is a hybrid.
Niro.
Right?
Yeah. Niro, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, you have the name right.
Yes, a compact hybrid vehicle.
Right.
You've got the Optima plug-in hybrid and hybrid.
Ram Charger, right?
Ram Power Wagon.
Power Wagon.
But it's a refresh of the Power Wagon.
Yeah.
So it's not an all-new Power Wagon.
So what you're saying is not really big interest.
Well, I'm just wondering about that. I mean,
well, you guys know the history of these shows better than I do.
Oh, the Titan. Well, there is also the regular Titan.
Yeah,
so this would be the half-ton with a six-cylinder.
Right.
Or not six-cylinder, this 5.6-liter engine.
Yeah. Refresh of the Chevy Trax. But you guys have watched this show cadence evolve. Los Angeles has clearly benefited by moving their show earlier in the season, well before Detroit. Is Chicago in a position now, because it's you got L.A., Detroit, New York, does Chicago need to change what it does?
Look, the Chicago show, from a media standpoint, has been shrinking for a long time, you know, in terms of media coverage or media attendance, I should say. And you look, how many car shows does this industry need? We got way too many car shows. And the automakers are all trying to save something, in this case for Chicago, because they know that whatever media is there is going to absolutely cover what's being announced at that show. But I think the writing's on the wall. Chicago is shrinking in importance from a media standpoint. the attendance in Chicago will probably swamp the Detroit show merely because Chicago is a much bigger city. There's a much more population in that region than there is in the Detroit region. Yeah. But Detroit's got the manufacturers and the suppliers and whatnot, so it will continue to survive. But you're right, LA is emerging as an important show. Even New York has been a terrific show the last couple of years.
Well, you got 40% of the luxury sold in this country is on the coasts, and particularly in New York and LA. So they really benefit from that. But at the same time, it seems to me, still new to auto shows, you have more product coming in this market than ever. I mean, the product cadences have all been sped up. You have more manufacturers coming in with more brands. You know, Hyundai introducing a luxury brand. Chrysler Fiat becoming a much bigger tent. So I still think you need the auto shows in order to show all this product. I just wonder if Chicago
become a smaller tent.
Well, that's another story.
NASCAR-wise, that's for sure, right?
But maybe Chicago ought to be in the summer. I just wonder if
that's when we're moving. Detroit is going to be in the summer. Yeah,
I want Detroit show out of January.
It's going to be in June.
Yeah, right.
But then they're not first.
So what?
But that's their big thing, right? We're the first. We're the first of the year.
Depends on how
does
you
that
measure.
make any difference? I don't think it does. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, you were just saying, well, you know, LA moved itself up, so it's earlier in the season. Well, not really. It's the last.
Right.
That doesn't hurt them at all.
Oh,
you know, New York is in around Easter time. Sometimes the weather's really good. Sometimes it's pretty brisk there, but it doesn't matter. It's the Big Apple. People want to go there. I mean, the media wants to go there. The marketing community wants to be there. So I don't know. I just think from a media standpoint, and even from a car company marketing standpoint, auto shows are going to change. I mean, it just can't go on like this, especially from a media day standpoint. The way they do the press conferences, it's shrinking in importance.
Yeah.
Henry, you're not very enthusiastic about that Nero.
Well, the hybrid electric market is shrinking, and you know, because we're all glorying in sub $2 a gallon gas prices. But the manufacturers have to meet these mandates. So it strikes me as a compliance car. The car actually that I find more interesting, that's sort of in that space.
The Armada?
Is not the Armada. The Armada's definitely not in that space. Is the Chevy Trax. I mean, the Trax is number one. Good for Chevy. Number one in the fastest growing segment in the industry, the subcompact segment, and they want to stay there. So just 13 months after they introduced this car
in the U.S.
In the U.S.
That vehicle's been out in the market
it's
elsewhere.
Right.
Well, it's made in Korea.
That's right. So what an opportunity for them. And they come out, and this is just for the U.S. consumer, just 13 months later, you got a better version of this subcompact. And the stuff that's in that market is really exciting.
So what do you see competing with the Trax?
The HRV, the Honda HRV, the CX-3 Mazda, the Jeep Renegade. I mean, there's a really wonderful variety. If you're in luxury, you know, you go up to the BMW X1 or the what's the Buick Encore, which actually sells more than anything.
Which is the same as the Trax.
Which is the same as the Trax.
Same car.
Okay, but might one make the argument, and not because the guys from Honda are probably still sitting back there, but I mean, I think the HRV is a far nicer car than the Trax, and I think that the CX-3 just is an incredible vehicle.
Fix that buzzy engine. I'd agree with you on the CX-3.
But I mean, it's sort of the styling.
Oh, the styling.
Oh my God, it's just
right for the CX-3.
So don't you think they basically just like have to do that refresh? I mean, it's not like they're saying to the market like, we're really nice guys.
From Henry's standpoint, I think it was second best in the class.
Well, behind the Encore, which is
but you know, so many competitors are piling in or going to pile in. Ford's got to get there fast with the EcoSport. Maybe that's what they're going to call the Bronco. But we'll see. Nonetheless, Toyota's not there. Ford's not there. You know they're going to get there. And it's just this amazing shift, as we were talking about earlier in the show, of people walking away from the passenger car segment, going to crossovers.
Right, and you know, you mentioned this briefly, Gary. Where is Chrysler? in this. I mean,
Bring back the caliber.
yeah, but I mean, this is the hottest segment, and this.
Well,
this
they're there
is
with
where,
Renegade.
That's right. The Jeep has a Renegade there, but I think Chrysler wants to be a
500X.
They want to be a mainstream manufacturer again.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure to get in there, and the Trax, which really looks a lot better, and it's already number 2 in the segment. But this one, it's bigger than a
It's got
CX-3.
all the new
It's got all the
Android,
app stuff, right?
Apple,
Yeah.
Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and
I really like what Chevy's doing across the board. Yeah, I like that the Detroit manufacturers like Chevy, like Jeep, are the first ones into this segment, for one. So they're leading a trend as opposed to following a trend, and they're putting out really good product.
All right, Henry, I may be cheating here, but I think I'm going to dispute your wonders of Trax. And
Yeah, last quarter, I think HRV led the.
all right, so HRV January sales 4177, Trax 3746.
Right, which is why you got to keep up. Honda's on the ascendance, which is why Chevy's got to keep up.
All right.
well, they should. Look, the Trax is an old vehicle. It may be only 13 months to this market, but it's several years old. The
2012.
HRV should be a better vehicle. It's a
Right.
newer vehicle.
That's right. Yeah, 2012, it was introduced in South America and the rest of the world. I mean, this is a product that is selling.
The Opel Mocha in other markets.
Selling 400,000 units a year.
Yeah.
I should say overall, 400,000 units a year since 2012. About 60,000 in this market last year.
Big props to Encore, though, 4920.
Yeah, but
Kick
think of that.
ass.
Think of that, Gary. I mean, that's 60,000 in sales they didn't have a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it goes to the crossover revolution, and it goes to why Chrysler is saying they're abandoning sedans. I mean, apparently,
We're really balling on Chrysler today. I'm on their ads. On their ads. You're criticizing them for not being in this market. You were dissing them for their lack of alternative powertrains. Man, you're a hater, Henry. This is unbelievable.
No, I like them. I like the Chrysler product. I'm just saying it's a tough industry right now. I mean, you have to.
It's a great industry right now.
Great industry. You have
But
to have
as
a lot
we
of
look
capital.
down towards the end of this decade, yowza, and things are going to go upside down.
Yeah, if you don't have a lot of capital out there, it's going to be hard to keep up.
Yeah.
And that's what, we all, obviously Marcioni is concerned about that.
Yeah. Hey, we got to wrap it up. We're a little bit over what we normally do, but the reason we're over is we've had great stuff to talk about here.
Yeah.
Henry Payne, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, John.
The House
Thanks,
of Payne.
Gary. Good to be in the House of Payne, House of McElroy.
And Gary, great seeing you as always, and we'll do it again next week.
Okie doke.
Real good. Thanks, everybody, for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Henkel. Excellence is our passion.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live. Get your daily news fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.